going through haircuts, there's a bunch of techniques that I use like throughout the entire thing, and it's based on my understanding of the tools that I'm using, along with the techniques and the haircut that I'm trying to perform or complete. I'm going to go through really quick a lot of the things that I believe are extremely important that I use all the time. I'm going to talk about it throughout this entire course, but just so you know, this is literally just a introduction to all of the things I'm going to be using. And I want you to focus on each one and pinpoint them throughout the entire course, and I think this will help you out a million. Now, the adjustable clipper. This is probably the barber's best friend, and most barbers who are fading are using this most of the time, so it's important that you know exactly what you're doing with this. So this is a lever open, and I consider this to be the least intensity at each level, where you have a 1, least intensity, open, least intensity, and that's the most intensity that is allowed to take off, which means the most hair is coming off per blade per guard with it being closed. The least hair is coming off per blade per guard with it being open. Just remember that, because I think of fading as erasing, so the intensity of your eraser is determined by that level. You can see even closer look here, the blade on its side looks like a right triangle. So you'll see that there's a thickness of a blade when you open it, and then the thickness of that blade gets smaller when you close it. Now, I do not typically zero gap my blades. I do have a zero gap blade and a nail width blade. So this one is zero gapped, and that's just to allow for closeness when it comes to skin fades or anything, but you can still do the same things I'm doing with it being factory set. Now let's take a closer look at the blade. We talked about the length of the hair in accordance to the lever. When we're looking at the blade width, we can see that it changes along from the tip when it goes to the back, and your ability to know that or take advantage of that is important when it comes to putting on guards, because you can see the same trend. And if you look at the guard, you can see the angle of the guard changes when you put on different guards. So that means your angle that you keep the blade to the head also will adjust a little bit. It's not that pertinent. As long as you're just aware of that and you know that, then you should be fine. Now, some things I'm going to say may be obvious to you, but they were not obvious to me. Now, you can see how big this guard is, but there's a cutting point right there. Cutting point right there. The bigger the guard, the less ability your clipper is to create tension. So you got to pay attention to where the cutting point is of the blade. Now, here is a taper blade. Typically don't use these, or use fade blades, is the one you previously seen. The angle is a little different, and you can also tell that the taper blade on the left is thicker. When I'm bringing out a trimmer, you can see the thinness of that blade is really important. That's what allows for sharp lines or hairs to be cut more finely or closely. And when you go towards a fade blade, it's like the next step up. So you close this, and it's the next step from a trimmer, and allows to blend to be very well done. And your ability to know that will also help your ability to fade between these two. Now, I say flick out and C motion throughout this entire tutorial, this entire course rather. And I think it's important to notice what happens when you stop and keep the blade flush to the head. This is a raking motion. And then when you raking motion like that, and that's allowing, it's like putting fake guards on your clipper so you don't have to turn and pick it up. But here, when I go up and stop, you can see I'm creating a line like that, and that allows you to see your place. But if you do that throughout your haircut, you're gonna just keep creating lines. This is where we flick out, so that you're gonna be, your wrist motion and your fingers are going to be creating blends while you're cutting, no matter what. So you'll be making a blend because of your motion, your C motion, your flick out. Now watch what happens when I stop and keep my blade flush. I am now aggravating that blend, and now I'm going back and I'm putting it back to shortest to longest, or least intense to most intense. And that keeps my shape and everything intact. When going from short hairs to long hairs, you want to make sure that your wrist, your arm, everything is just helping you do that motion well. So I usually start with the longest section, and I use a 2, close the lever, and that's the most intense the 2 will be. But I'm making sure that I'm flicking out so that I'm not making a line hard at the top of the head. And you can see I've created these lines, and I'm showing you the best ways to show them or do them. Stopping is good for beginners so they can see the lines and know where they are. But as you move on and progress, you're going to want to make sure you use the corner of the blade and flick out and set your lines. Opening up next, we call that a half. Anytime the blade is open, we call it a half and just add it to whatever the number of guard is on there. So this is a half because it's a 0 open. Focusing on the corner of the blade is extremely important because the corner of the blade is like another extra added guard. It's the step in between where you are and the next guard. So when I'm using a trimmer, I use the corner of the blade in order to blend into the clipper. If I'm using a no guard, use the corner of the blade to blend into a half or a 1. This is a 1. And notice that the shape of the fade is curved. So in order to move on each shape, you need to make sure that you're using the corner of the blade so you can turn. If you use the whole blade, you'll be creating squares and straight lines and you won't be able to curve. Now I won't be doing the whole fade. I'm just showing you how I would blend a 0 into a 1. Now that's the line. I'd go up on the next line, but this is just me showing you exactly how I'd attack the line. You attack lines like that. Now I'm going below the line because it's a 0 in order to make sure that it's blend. A lot of this will make sense when you keep going on the course. Now I speak on clipper over comb a lot in this course. I think the best thing about clipper over comb is the width of that width of that comb is bigger than the one of the clipper, so you will have a hard time making a mistake if you have accuracy. Very important method, and when you get your speed up, there's nothing that can compare to clipper over comb. You can do whole haircuts with the clipper over comb and literally go from a 1 up into a 3 and never have to pick up any guards, creating full haircuts on the side at least, without having to turn and pick up any guard. This is the importance of techniques. Techniques will speed up your time and allow you to do things you wouldn't be able to do if you just use guards.